Nerves, where you keep calm and lead on. I am Madhurantika, your host for this episode of Ditch the Nerves. Today we are delighted to have with us distinguished Toastmaster Jacqui Hogan, who has been an active member of Toastmasters since 2001, and during which she has served in multiple leadership roles across the organization, which includes at the club level as the club president, the vice president education, vice president membership, area director, division director. Jacqui is widely respected for her commitment to leadership development and also for member growth through mentoring. She is fondly known for her love for storytelling and her passion for painting animals, and especially penguins. And her memorable speech, The Last Penguin, which continues to resonate with the audiences even today. Jacqui, welcome to this episode of the podcast.
Thank you. It's pleased to be here.
Toastmasters clubs around the world have either started or will very soon have their elections for their 2026-27 term for the club executive committee. And this is a very important step in Toastmasters because, to quote distinguished Toastmaster Gauri Shashadri, the first vice president of Toastmasters International for the current term, who was a guest in Ditch the Nerves podcast for one of the episodes, she said something very interesting, that a member always joins or leaves a club, not an area, not a division, not a district. So in today's episode, we'll focus on why leadership at the club level is so important, and we'll discuss some of the roles, and hope this will help our members who are planning to get into leadership roles very soon. To begin with, Jacqui, from your experience, why is the club level experience so critical in shaping a member's journey and in the long-term engagement with Toastmasters?
I think it's because people join to improve their speaking. They stay because of the people. I think what happens is that you meet people who have the same sort of expectations and needs that you do. And of course, it's in the club is where you actually get the opportunity to speak in front of a supportive audience. But it's the people, the other people who are there, who help support you and that you can support them.
What role do you think they play in ensuring that the members stay?
I think it's a matter of kind of almost like being a catalyst between the members to help them to get the most out of their interactions with people. I think what people tend to forget is the executive committee are what make the club run. They're sort of sitting behind the scenes a lot of the time and kind of doing the things that kind of help the people integrate with each other and make it easier for people to learn.
Why do we recommend members to become committee members? What personal or professional gain do they get?
I think there's two things. One is, without an executive committee, the club doesn't exist. I think that's one of the important things. When we join a Toastmasters club, we make a promise to be part of and be there to help all of the other members in the club. I think what's not sold well enough is the skills that you can learn by being on the committee. For example, you'll learn project management skills, you'll learn people management skills, and managing volunteers is such a good skill, a base skill for anyone who wants to improve their management. I've worked as a management manager for many years, and it's been invaluable in terms of those sort of little things about how to deal with people who you can't sack because they're volunteers, so you have to understand more about their motivation and your own motivation as well.
You touched upon a very interesting point, Jacqui. So being a leader in a corporate setup versus being a leader in a voluntary setup, what's the difference?
Fairly fundamental. In a corporate environment, and I've been a senior manager in a corporate environment, is that you're kind of relying on a hierarchy. So I'm your boss, you're their boss, and so on. And there's a degree of expectation with that. With volunteers is that people have their own motivations for doing different roles and acquiring different skills. As a manager, you've got to really understand the motivation in a way that you don't have to really in a corporate setting. But having gained that skill, it's so invaluable as a manager in a corporate situation, because Motivation is what gets people to do things.
Absolutely. You can get a lot from a pat on the back than a bang on the table.
Yeah, and of course you can't reward people with money in a Toastmasters club like you can in corporate. There's no bonuses or anything.
So whenever I talk to members, I think one of the reasons why members hesitate to take up committee roles is because they think it's a lot of commitment. How would you describe the level of commitment involved, and how does it compare when we talk about the benefits and growth one receives in return of the investment?
Well, I've done all of the roles on the committee apart from Sergeant at Arms, and I would say in every case I've got more out of it than I've put in. The amount of time commitment does vary, both in terms of how committed and how much time you want to spend on the role, and also depending on the role. I mean, some roles don't require a lot of time, like secretary. Treasurer, a little bit more time than secretary. The role that really requires the most time is VP Ed, VP of Education, but I've seen people not spend a lot of time on that. It all depends, because if you've got a good president who motivates the members to think about what they want to do in advance, the amount of time and work that the VP Ed has to do is less. But I wouldn't have said any of the roles are particularly onerous, no.
Right. Since you mentioned the Vice President of Education, what key skills, particularly in project management and coordination, does one develop if the person chooses to take up this role? And are some of these skills limited to Toastmasters, or they are transferable beyond Toastmasters? It's
probably the role, including the president, that those are the two roles that have the most transferable skills, I would have said. For the VPE is that if you're a project manager or you're someone who wants to get into project management, it's a really good way of learning how to schedule, because there are tools out there that make your life easier. But it's a matter of learning how to schedule, learning how to plan, and learning how to communicate. Those are the three key skills that you'll learn as a VP Ed. I would say you can go into the role without having those skills, because you'll learn them, and you'll probably get the most out of it if you do that. But the better you are at them, especially communication, is that the less work's involved.
Yeah, I think that's the good thing about Toastmasters, that sometimes you take up these roles not because you're good at it, but because you're not, and you want to develop those skills. And yeah. Toastmasters is a place where you can make mistakes and learn by making mistakes.
And there's always someone there to support you.
Absolutely. The other role which I also find very interesting is the Vice President membership. And that's because probably a guest walking into a club meeting would probably meet the Vice President membership the first. And also they play a critical role in the conversion from a guest to become a member. So could you elaborate on the broader responsibilities of the Vice President membership? Because I think the role doesn't end only in the conversion, but also the hand-holding later. And how this role contributes to the sustainable growth of the club and in member retention.
Well, I think you've highlighted probably the most important thing about the VP membership role, and that is the conversion of guests to members. And it's a bit sadly neglected in a lot of clubs, because people think, well, we can just leave guests. We don't want to bother them too much. But actually, as a marketing colleague of mine once said, is that you bother people until they say, stop bothering me. So you do have to be a little bit pushy, I think, in that role. I think in terms of the existing members, it's where the VP Ed and VP membership work in partnership, because the dividing line between who looks after the existing members will vary depending on who's doing those roles and how experienced your members are. But otherwise, because the VP Ed could just do the scheduling, and if that happens, then the VP membership has to move a little bit more towards contacting members, checking if they're not attending meetings. Why not? In some clubs, the VP Ed does that, but it's a matter of agreeing how that's going to mesh together to make sure that members don't fall down in the hole between, which older members, more experienced members often do.
True. Since you're also talking about the overlap and we're talking of member retention, so one thing I also wanted to discuss, because you're known for it, is mentoring. So mentoring, do you see it as a role of more of the Vice President membership or Vice President education, or somewhere in between? Because I think mentoring in Toastmasters is also a very beautiful component that we have. And I think it plays a big role in member retention.
Well, officially, it's part of the VPE role. What a lot of clubs do is they will have a separate person doing it. So they'll have an unofficial vice president of mentoring. The reason why that's a good idea is that it then means that the VPE can focus more on the scheduling side, and the VP membership can focus more on the conversion side. If you've got enough members in the club, it's also a good way of getting people into the committee, because the more people you have on your committee, the less work there is for any one person. What a lot of clubs do is that they divide the mentoring into new member mentoring, and which really is what we call in our club buddying, which means that you don't have to be very experienced to be that mentor. You just have to be a step or two ahead of the new member. No mentoring experience required, just hand-holding for the new member to explain how they can log into Pathways or Basecamp or EasySpeak or whatever it is you use, just to kind of give them that kind of extra help. Mentoring, because I used to be a professional mentor, is more in the kind of later stages where someone may have got to grips with the system but need more help with the kind of next level of speaking or understanding what the leadership opportunities are. To be honest, even now it's still a bit woolly in a lot of clubs, but the fastest way to lose a new member is for them not to understand how the system works.
So you mentioned again that you were a professional mentor. So was this in a corporate context?
Yes. Well, yes, I've done it in a corporate context. I've also done it as a one-to-one personal thing. I actually ran an organisation's mentoring programme for several years, yes.
Because I was going to go back to my same question. How is mentoring in a corporate environment different from mentoring in a Toastmasters environment? And does mentoring in these two circumstances require different set of skills, attitude? How does it work?
Core skills are the same. I think what often happens in corporate situations is that it can get in the way of independence, if you know what I mean. In a corporate setting, and I've done corporate mentoring training, is that quite often the assigned mentor will be a more senior person in the mentee's organisation. Sometimes their boss, sometimes a friend of their boss or a colleague of their boss. So the level of independence is missing. So there's not the opportunity to be quite as confiding as a mentee. In a Toastmasters organisation, also the range of things that you're providing mentoring in is much narrower. Whereas in corporate, it will be kind of job opportunities. It'll be promotion, it'll be how do I get the right project, how do I approach a project, because I don't feel I'm doing it competently, which is not something you probably want to discuss with a mentor who's your boss, unless you really trust them, but it takes longer to build a trust relationship in a corporate environment. Toastmasters, is particularly at the beginning stage as a buddy, is that you're really just helping them get to the next step. So it's quite narrow in terms of what you can help them with. Sometimes you might act as a sounding board for a speech. It kind of gives you the foundation stones for doing corporate mentoring, I would have said. Having said that, is that mentoring requires you to take a certain approach, listening, making suggestions, not telling people what they need to do, which you quite often find in a corporate environment. And learning those sorts of base skills will give you a foundation for becoming a better mentor in a corporate environment, in my view.
Yeah. Thanks for this suggestion, because I think mentoring is very important, and that you can also have unofficial vice president mentoring, I think is a good learning for many of us.
I think the other point I would make about that is that a lot of people fight shy of doing the mentoring because they feel then they don't have any mentoring experience. Toastmasters is a really good way of getting started.
We are talking about building a very strong and an inclusive committee. As the clubs form the new committee, what does an effective composition of a committee look like? Are we talking about balancing between experienced and new members, existing members, long-standing members, diversity in terms of age, background? What are some of the considerations we should have when we are forming a committee?
All of those.
Because sometimes the club is a small club, maybe with 10-15 members, which makes the choice maybe easy or difficult. But sometimes you also have clubs which are more than 30-40 members. So in both these contexts, what would be the primary considerations for forming a committee?
In an ideal world, the president will be someone who's been on the committee for at least a year and has a basic understanding of how all of the Toastmasters works. A basic understanding. They will have an area director to help them. They'll also have an immediate past president to ask questions of that are particularly club related. Ideally, you need someone who's experienced, someone who has some management experience or wants to get some management experience. VP Ed probably needs to be someone who's fairly experienced in scheduling. They ideally need to be a bit IT literate, I think. Otherwise, is that it really needs to be a mix of people who've been on the committee before and new people. And you need both, because you need some experience, because otherwise everything can fall into chaos. And you need new people, because that's where you get new ideas. Experienced, brand new members. I've seen someone go straight into the president's role who was a new member, but he was an experienced manager and leader. He did a fantastic job. He had other people on the committee who understood how Toastmasters worked, and he was very good at asking questions. But yeah, I think what puts people off is A, the time they think they're going to have to commit, and secondly is they feel that they don't know Toastmasters well enough to kind of go onto the committee. But it really doesn't matter as long as you've got the expertise there somewhere.
So other than the president, how important is it that the person is somebody whom the members know, or it can still be a new member?
The first role I did on the committee was VP Education, and the thing I learnt is that you get to know the other members very quickly.
Yes.
I was an experienced project manager at the time, and so the scheduling side was straightforward. I think if you went straight in as a new member and you didn't have any understanding or knowledge of scheduling, it would be a bit of a learning curve. It depends. I don't think you need to know the members before you go into that role, no. You'll get to know them quickly. A little bit of understanding or the willingness to learn is important, because if you can't really schedule the roles in the meeting if you don't know what they are. But yeah, people learn quickly.
As we wrap up, any key message to our members who have thinking of getting into a committee or probably hesitating to getting into a committee?
Don't wait to be asked. Give it a go.
Not to overthink.
Don't overthink it, absolutely. What I found is that a lot of people will do it if they're asked, but they won't volunteer. If you volunteer, you will be thanked to the end of the world in your club, because just other people don't. And it's not that bad. It's great fun.
It is.
I've been on the Toastmasters committee probably of those 25 years. I've probably been on the committee 20 years, and I love it.
Thank you so much for your valuable inputs. And to our audience who have been committee members, who are planning to become committee members, or are currently committee members, I think that's invaluable experience from Jacqui, who's been on committees for so many years. Thank you so much. And best wishes from the both of us to having a strong executive committee in the coming term. Bye for now. Keep calm and ditch the nerves. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.